Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on wherever you're at in the world. I'm Kevin Coyne. Welcome to the Venture Outfitter. We're here to work today on a bunch of different things. I'm excited to have you here and want to let you know that we actually have even more people we're working on in the back room. I was just saying some of the things that are happening as we're upping the production value of what we're up to and what we're working on. Make a long story short, today what we're going to talk about is what ecosystems never talk about with entrepreneurs and the inner game, and I think how important that is. And so part of what I want to do is really start talking about some of the more serious topics as we go through this. We've been talking about being in a down economy, and the thing about it is entrepreneurs have to work through things no matter what. And I realize I didn't push one of the right buttons, so I'm going to bring this off and I'll click on this one thing. Hey, Zoom, at some point, it'd be nice if I don't have to keep on clicking my settings, but that's just feedback. Welcome to the Venture Outfitter. Part of what we'll do is we're going to talk about that today. Thank you to DualWorks, Linda Blackman. If you're in the Austin area over the next month and at the end of October, somewhere in the middle of October, we're going to have a Tech Ranch reunion here at DualWorks. Linda Blackman was in Venture Force 17. If you happen to be here sometime after October 15th, we haven't finalized the date yet, but you're welcome to join us. And there will be a little get together here at DualWorks. But DualWorks is a great place for being co-working. If you need a mailbox, they're a long-term supporter of the Tech Ranch, and Tech Ranch is a long-term supporter of Linda in her business. So join us here. It's definitely a great place. And so thank you, Linda, for the continuing support. If you're looking for special opportunities or special deals, or you need a special configuration of what your office might be, or if you want a closed door office at a reasonable price, Linda and her team have those. And so talk to us, or you can go to this website, or you can reach out to them directly. If you reach out through us, you will get a discount. Coming soon, we're going to talk about innovation, skunkworks, and getting cozy with the corporates. As I mentioned last time, my background is in innovation. Most of my entrepreneur career has been in innovation. And one of the reasons this is important is the large corporates, they typically ignore innovation until they have to. At a down market where they're having to lay off people and stuff like that is when they start thinking, oh, wait, we better do something new so we can evolve. And many of them won't make it, but the truth is that one of the times that we can actually really focus in on working with those kind of corporates is during this time. We will have a September 22nd and a September 29th Venture Outfitter Weekly. We're still working on getting the speakers confirmed for those, and we haven't gotten them confirmed yet. But then October 6th, I will be in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. And the week after, I will be in Yerevan, Armenia. And so we'll be working with entrepreneurs in both locations. And on the 6th, we'll actually do it from on-site in Tashkent, and I'll give you a little bit more of a flavor of what's happening there. There's some really interesting things happening in all the stands, and they're much more interesting than I thought. I just, hadn't really learned much about this, but I'll tell you more from a first person when we're there on October 6th. And yeah, we are going to print up concert t-shirts, at least I hope at some point. So part of what this slide is this slide is a slide that we used a lot in the campfires over the years. It feels like there's a part of Tech Ranch that, even though we're not doing co-working anymore, that's come back. And I'm starting to feel like we've got something figured out about these cross-country networks, because there's this characteristic that is now happening where you guys are interacting a lot more. And we'll talk a little bit more about what's happening. But part of what I wanted to do is just say, hey, for those of y'all that remember this slide from, that you've been around for 10 to 15 years ago, there's some things that are actually coming back about the energy of Tech Ranch. And I'm real excited about that. It's like dusting off after getting out of the co-working business, and dusting off after all the difficulties that we had with COVID. Obviously, all the news reports says that we're in a down economy and all sorts of other things are happening. But the truth is that there's something that I feel is happening in the network, and I want to bring that out. So part of what I thought I'd do, several of y'all said, hey, we'd really like to hear from more of the entrepreneurs around the tech ranch. How are people doing? And so I thought that the thought for the day today would come from one of my favorites, Dr. Emmanuel Iguoho, who is in Lagos, Nigeria. I met in 2018 on a program that Tech Ranch and the Pandemic Tech Accelerator did in Abuja, Nigeria, focused on taking on infectious diseases. And he said this recently on his Facebook, and I follow him, and I always find him as an inspiration. I think it's goes both directions, but it's just been great. So he said, you discover the true beauty of entrepreneurship when you find purpose. Why did you start the journey? It's a roller coaster ride. The ups are the profits and the downs are the losses. Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. It's just the vinegar truth. That's how it's structured. For me, I found my purpose. I live to help people prevent diseases. I exist to make the world a better place. That's why I was created, and I feel fulfilled doing what I do. The grass is greener on the other side. People, entrepreneurship, vaccine advocate. So Emmanuel has launched a new business on top of the one that we've heard about before. But I saw this a couple of days ago, and I was like, I really have to share this because Emmanuel could have actually taken a really cushy job. He got his, became a medical doctor, and he could have just hopped into a really cushy, doctor kind of existence. But because he lost family members to disease, he said, hey, wait, I have to start a business and to take this on. And it's great to see what he's doing and how things are moving. So we salute you, Emmanuel. Secondly, when I was in Ramallah, Palestine in 2019, I met this entrepreneur. His name is Bakr, and he just recently had an announcement about their smart agricultural system. The company's name is called Flowless. Flowless is essentially they're deploying water technology to help farmers in Palestine and in Jordan. And I thought the video was interesting enough that I just wanted to share with you. So here it is.
مرحبا، أنا بكر بوزي من فلولس. إحنا اليوم في غور الصافي، في غور الأردن في المنطقة الجنوبية. فلولس إحنا بنساعد المزارعين على زيادة كفاءة استخدام المياه والموارد عن طريق نظام أوتوماتيكي ذكي بيساعد على أتمتة العمليات الزراعية من عمليات الري، عمليات التسميد والعمليات الأخرى في المزرعة.
توجهت لتنظيم الزراعة من خلال التكنولوجيا، ومن كذا تعاونت مع شركة فلولس لتنظيم نظام كمبيوترايزد لتنظيم عملية الري وعملية التسميد وكشف فحص تركيب حساسات بداخل المزرعة من أجل كشف الرطوبة، زيادة، نقص، حتى نتعامل معها حسب الضرورة، وكشف درجة الحرارة.
نظامنا بتكون من عدة مكونات بشكل أساسي من هاردوير وسوفتوير. هدفها أنها تجمع بيانات من المزرعة عن رطوبة التربة، عن حرارة الجو وبيانات أخرى. وبناء على هذه البيانات إحنا بنساعد المزارع أنه يأتمت العمليات الزراعية بما في ذلك عمليات ضخ المياه أو تزويد السماد للمزرعة.
المزارعين أحياناً بيرتجلوا عملية التسميد والري وكذا، لكن حاولت بهذا النظام أنه أحدث وأشتغل بطريقة علمية، ونأمل خيراً إن شاء الله.
في هذه المزرعة وهي مزرعة نخل، إحنا ساعدنا المزارع على تقليل استخدام المياه وتحسين جودة المنتوج. هذه المزرعة احنا ركبنا فيها النظام بالتعاون مع برنامج الأغذية العالمي ومؤسسة سيوس.
You are muted, Kev.
Thank you. That's funny. I didn't want to make any noise. Thank you, Jello, for that. The thing I wanted to say really quick was that I want to start telling the story that I get to see. I'm in this like special place because I get to see all these different places around the world, and I realized that a lot of what happens is that not enough of the stories of the entrepreneurs are being told, whether we're talking about the entrepreneurs that we just heard from in Jordan and in Palestine, as well as in Nigeria. And so I would love to actually do that, where we're actually showing off a little bit more. And so part of what I'd like to make sure that everyone knows, if you're in the Tech Ranch family, we have time that we'd like to spotlight what you're up to. And every week, I want to actually be sharing a spotlight or two about what's happening. Sometimes we'll actually even do more. So back to the things that are happening, though. Part of what I wanted to make sure that you knew about as well is, so yesterday I hosted Most Ventures, which is out of Kazakhstan. You might say Kazakhstan. Well, so there's this, I'm not sure why it is, but all of a sudden a bunch of Kazakhs, a bunch of Uzbeks, a bunch of Armenians, a bunch of like people from Central Asia have been coming over to Austin. And Austin is in this interesting place, right? Because, we're at this crossroads. If you've ever heard of South by Southwest, part of what that implies is the crossroads, right? And I think Austin has a certain thing to offer to the world. The idea is, I think the Austin entrepreneurial model, it's really distinct from the Silicon Valley model. Although Silicon Valley is moving into Austin, is trying to really, become more, Silicon Valley like. I hope that never happens, because part of what is important about what is happening right now, and one of the reasons you're going to hear me talking about Central Europe, Central Asia, all over the Americas, all the way back to Australia. Why is that important? What's happening? Part of it is we're going to start really articulating this network and making it much more visible. In my case, I've been to 27 countries over the last 6 years, but I realized that the story isn't visible to a lot of people. And so this is going to be an important part. Back to the guys from Most Ventures. One of the fun things about talking to them is I did not know that the word most in Russian, as I understand it, means bridge. And so they got finished with their presentation, and then I presented Tech Ranch, and I said, we need to build a venture bridge together. And they said, wait, this is what you do. And, it was really interesting to see that that was part of what was being talked about. And so we will be doing some interesting things in the coming weeks with this organization. I might even be hopping into Kazakhstan when I go to Uzbekistan and Armenia. And so just so you know, just want to let you know about what's happening there. And if you have, let's see, I'm just being told that most means bridge in Czech too. So one of our entrepreneurs from the Czech Republic, David Nichols, is in the house as well. So we'll hear more about this. One of the example technologies, you might say, okay, why Kazakhstan? Why does it matter? So one of the things that, one of the ventures that we'll be looking at, it helps that Most is invested in, takes on strokes and can prevent, both detect before it's about to happen and prevent strokes. And I think everyone in the world would like to avoid having a stroke. I know that I would like to avoid that. And so as an example, emerging disruptive technologies that could save your life can be found all over the world. So thanks to the Most guys for joining us here in Austin, and I look forward to having that first cup of tea or that next cup of tea in Kazakhstan with you guys. So there's a new community site coming soon. Some of you have been invited to it. I've only invited a very small number of people because it's not perfect yet. And, I have that little Steve Jobs difficulty that everything's got to be freaking perfect or it's crap. And so it's not perfect yet, but you'll notice that a lot of the discussion areas that you see in this slide that are historically in our Slack channels have been updated. I'm going to be myself and Omar and Jello are going to be inviting a handful of y'all to be involved in this site. It feels good enough to launch in a very subtle way. So for a handful of y'all to actually do that, Kristen's reminding me, progress, not perfection, Kevin. She said that many times before. Thank you for being here, Kristen. Many times in the past, it's like, and I've said that too, right? One side of me is a perfectionist. The other side is the guy who said, anything worth doing is worth bleeping up, screwing up, but using a curse word for the word screwing up. So I believe in that as well. I will make sure that we start inviting people out. If you're in the studio audience right now, since I can see kind of who's in the studio audience, and you want Jello to go ahead and invite you, direct message your email address to him. He has access to it. And like I said, we're doing a soft start on this. It's not a formal start. The onboarding procedures haven't been polished to TechRange standards. That being said, they're out there, and I'm kind of excited about that. So because it's looking like it's coming together. We also will be launching a separate training site. So community.techrange.com is our site for community, and then some of the learning management systems and some of the we're going to have some special classes that are how does TechRange do that, like the communication protocol that we have around TechRange. I've already launched a small course in that at train.techrange.com. Probably if you go to train.techrange.com, though, you won't see anything that you can really do just yet, because we're kind of keeping that under wraps just for a little bit to focus the energy on the community site. Community site, though, is at least in alpha state at this point. So thank you for all the support that you all have had and the patience as well. So today is talking about the self. And I think that as I've used this graphic to kind of say what we're looking at as we talk about the conversation that we as entrepreneurs and as a community of entrepreneurs, or a community of practice of entrepreneurs, need to manage across. We need to manage across all 6 domains. And it's important to be thinking about this. I always want, as a quick aside, if you have ideas for programs across any one of these 6 domains that you'd like to see on the Venture Outfitter Weekly, please let me know. I would like to, or let myself and let Jello know. His email address is ea@techrangeaustin.com. And the idea is that we really want to start really ramping up the tools that you have in your toolbox for building your venture. So hopping in about the self, I think this is one of the most important conversations that we can have about the inner game of entrepreneurship. And I said, what ecosystems leaders never talk about with entrepreneurs, especially in the cultures that are, masculine or hierarchy dominant, where, you ask, one of the reasons that I always hated being in Silicon Valley, you ask someone, hey, how's it going? And they're like, oh, we're just killing it. We're just killing it. And for those of us that are empaths, we knew, as you look at the person that's just killing it, you knew that they're dying inside. They just don't want to tell you. I've gone through that. Myself, especially in my early career when I was still in my 20s, I was doing really well as an entrepreneur, and I was actually making lots of money, and my face was on the cover of Computer World magazine. But who really cared? Because I was really dying inside. It was a really shitty part of my life, even though I was financially doing pretty well. And, I had all the trappings of the, high-tech founder doing really well. like really kind of hating life and surprised that he made it out of the 90s alive. So that's a whole other story. But part of what I want to talk about is some ideas about this. And today, especially since we have a really strong studio audience, I want to make sure I signal to you guys that there's going to be a space for us all to share, whether you're in, let's see, I see Haiti represented, I see Honduras represented, I see Mexico represented in our studio audience, whether you're from New Zealand or whatever you might be. The main thing that I would love to actually have you'd be part of this conversation. We will have time for that as part of this because I think it's important. And here in Texas as well. So, but one of the things that was interesting is Dr. Misty Funk, the woman in the picture, actually had an interesting guy come speak to us. Actually, this was she ran a series of programs here in Austin years ago. They were really nice just because she'd get entrepreneurs, typically entrepreneur ecosystem leaders. And this is true across the United States. It's true across the world. Entrepreneur ecosystem leaders kind of avoid the soft subjects. They want to talk to you about business. They want to talk to you about, investment, all that sort of stuff. But she ran this one program, and she had a guy by the name of John Henry McDonald speak. And John Henry, if you can find his website online, and we'll make sure in the show notes on the YouTube channel that we have, that it's just like johnhenrymcdonalds.com. And I might have misspelled McDonald's, so I apologize in advance if I did, because every once in a while, being dyslexic, I screwed that up. But back and forth, Misty had these talks, and John Henry said, he told the story about how he was homeless. And then he actually went from being homeless to actually living out of his car. And then he went from there to then, at the time that he was presenting to me and Misty in this group a few years ago, he had $7 million well invested, and he decided that he's just going to focus on being a musician. And if you go to his website, John Henry McDonald, you'll see videos of him playing his guitar and all sorts of other stuff that he's now launched all this music and stuff like that. Really a successful man, but you never would imagine, being an alcoholic and the pain that he went through that whole process, being a Vietnam vet, some of the crap that he had to do. Melissa Lombard, who is a woman that did a lot of articles in the past about a lot of different people around the old Austin, especially, posted this article. So the QR code tells his story as well, if you want to see a little bit more of a picture of his story. But the most important thing that I heard is he said, until you heal the inside, the outside's not going to, nothing's going to happen on the outside. Outside being the trappings of successful business. In my case, and the time that I was talking about, I was a millionaire, but it didn't really matter. It's because I was one step away from all sorts of crap happening. When I heard this, it was really important, because part of actually, let me step into the model that I like to talk about around the Tech Ranch. Now, I call this the social architecture for entrepreneurship. It is based on someone else's work, and it's influenced by a guy by the name of Ken Wilber. But I looked at his work and I interpreted it in a total different way, and I put my own language on it. He has this four quadrant model where he talks about what happens. One of the things that happens in business education, a lot of times, is business professors want to tell you about the mechanics. They want to tell you about revenue minus cost equals profit. They want to have you go through a whole MBA program where and it's important. You're never going to be successful if you don't know that equation. You're never going to be profitable if you don't know that. So that's important. But a lot of times in an American discourse on entrepreneurship, there's too much focus on that. Lean startup, all that sort of stuff. Those are important tools, but that's just on the outside. The second thing we'll see a lot of times is structure. I don't know how many times I've seen millions of dollars being spent, tax dollars being spent on buildings, whether in the United States or some other part of the world. Beautiful building of It's like, this is our entrepreneurship center. This is where it happens, all the blah, blah, blah. But you walk in and, you see all this equipment. I was talking to these guys from Kazakhstan. They said there's places where you can walk into, even there in Kazakhstan, where there's beautiful equipment, but there's no one actually, connected in to the, actually using it. And, what's missing? So structures are important. It's important to have a building. It's important to have computers. It's important to have the tools to work with. It's important to have the know-how, the mechanics. But you really have to also focus on the motivations. This is the interior game. So this is this model that I'm sharing. Like I said, influenced by Ken Wilber, but I kind of twisted it in a whole different way. And the words that we're using are actually from ones that I put onto the idea. The motivations of why is it, we heard from Emmanuel earlier, why is it that he, instead of taking the cushy job as a doctor, he took on building a business in Lagos, Nigeria for doing that type of work? The motivations why, you really have to be in focus on that. And then finally, the culture. And part of what we're here to do is build a community of practice, working with each other, because a lot of times it's like, you helping me or me helping you, and the feeling of wanting to move forward, the anti-Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, the thing I always hated about Silicon Valley, I loved it. I loved my times. I was out there twice during my career. But the thing I hated about it was I'd be in social media technology and you'd be in water technology. And, especially between guys, we'd totally be at each other's throats, trying to outman the other one, outcompete the other one. It's like it's a really dark part of Silicon Valley and entrepreneurship around the world as well, where we're competing with people who are not our competitors. Like we're competing like a false competing. That's why we have to really engender this culture of wanting to work with each other. That's what this model is about. And part of what happened is the stuff that's on the left really is not talked a lot about in entrepreneur programs. That is in traditional, business-led entrepreneur programs. And so I want to make sure that we're talking about that. We're going to come back to the culture of home, especially as we deploy that community site. We'll talk a lot more about this, but today is all about this. So for me, and this is the thing I was joking beforehand, I wanted to write down the 29 different things that I have done to try to free myself. We'll have a class about this, or we'll have a VO weekly where I talk about it. I might take 3 on per time or something like that, about doing everything from trying to find freedom, trying to find like a path to freedom, whether it's through meditation or psychedelics, sitting with a shaman, or doing Aikido for a long time, or training brain site C4 to 11.5 hertz, doing neurofeedback or something like that. I can tell you all about that sort of stuff. I made a list one time, and I counted 29 different things that I'd done. I didn't have enough time to put them on the slide because I was putting this together really quick, and I realized I couldn't find my list. So I really think that there is some important things that you can do. I think I've kind of gone off the deep end about that. I'm different than a lot of the other ecosystem leaders in that, for me, and maybe it's just the scars that I was given, that this has been more important than anything else. And a little bit to the audience, I want you guys to actually be able to talk about this stuff too, if you feel so moved, about tools that you use to actually find your way to freedom. And freedom, what freedom is not just having the financial means because your startup is successful. Freedom is actually figuring out that you can actually use it, that you can actually be free, not be trapped. Like in my, going into 29 to 30, I remember, like, here I am, look at my bank account, look at my picture on, all these different magazines, but stuck. I'm much more free now at 54 years old than I was as a 30-year-old. I actually feel younger. It's kind of funny. And some of it's this sort of stuff. Some of it is, going to a place like Burning Man and having a mind-opening experience at the middle of the temple. This is several different pictures of the temple. At some point, I'll talk about Burning Man, just because that is another one of the liberating experiences that I've had. But as I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you guys about this, I'm going to give you three suggestions. You don't have to go to the end of the earth. You don't have to go to Burning Man. You don't have to go, like, put on some funky clothes and hang out with a bunch of smelly hippie types in the middle of the desert. There are tools that you can use. And the number one thing that I really want to push hard on is I want to push hard on this idea that you do the work, Now, in my case, to save my own life and to be free, I had to do those 29 different things. And I'm going to share more about that in the coming weeks. I've been trying to challenge myself to have the guts to talk about it publicly, and I'm almost there. So y'all can push, some of y'all might push me a little bit, but and I'll receive that pushing well. But you don't have to go to Burning Man. You don't have to do all these crazy things. For those of y'all that are looking for three suggestions, I'm going to make three suggestions from books that I've read recently. I've read over the years, and I've read 1,000 books, so I've got more to suggest, but I'm going to pick three today. And then we're going to hear from some other people, some of the other entrepreneurs in the community about this as well. But the first one is drive. If you really want to move, it says the surprising truth about what motivates us on the subtext there. Drive by Daniel Pink. It's a book, and he talks about you have to have three things, and entrepreneurs should be the epitome of this. You have to have autonomy, meaning you have control of your own outcomes. You have to be on a path to mastery. Like, as an example, 25 years on the Aikido mat, I'm on the path to mastery. Now, I only have a third degree black belt, and I now can see that I've got even farther to go, right? As soon as you start knowing something, you realize how much farther you have to go. So you have to be on the path to mastery. Entrepreneurs certainly are on the path to mastery. I recognize in the studio audience several people that are actually dealing with that. And then you have to have a purpose. One of the things I love about Emmanuel's statement is in knowing his story, and at some point we'll get him to come back. He's been on the program before, but we'll get him to come back to talk about his story. You have to have a purpose. The book really digs into that. And for those of you all that don't want to go to, the crazy desert and stuff like that, you can do that too. And we should talk about the value of that. But this is a first step that you might take in reading this book and then applying it. The second one is a book that is, if you really take it seriously, can be really, really challenging. It's called The War of Art. The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Now, Stephen Pressfield is one of the writers that wrote I'm going to forget the name of the movie now as I say it, The Legend of Bagger Vance. And he actually, he talks about, like, he talks about what it took to become successful in that, and what it took to overcome the painful times that he had to go through. And one of the beautiful things about the story is he challenges in the same question over and over and over. And he says, are you going to be an amateur? Are you going to be a professional? An amateur, the first three letters of amateur, ama, actually come from a word in Latin that means I love. Like amo, amare, amatum, amavi. Mrs. Kane, my Latin teacher from high school, would be proud that I even remember those words. But amare, amare means this is about love. Amateurs love what they're doing. They just love what they're doing, and so they're kind of just playing at it and all that stuff. But professionals, they do. They don't feel good. They still do. They feel great about it. They're having a great time. They still do. Professionals deliver. And it's a really challenging book. It's not a very long book. It's an in-your-face book because it just says, hey, you fell down. Okay, who cares? Are you going to be an amateur who decides to sleep in that day? Or are you going to be a professional who moves forward? Now, you have to be careful about that, right? It's like, I have pushed myself to almost adrenal failure, and I know some of you guys have as well. So back to this, the main thing is to make sure you balance that. And I think there are many of us that are seeking balance, and we can talk about that. I'm not the balance expert, by the way. We'll find him or her sometime soon. But are you going to be an amateur? Or are you going to be a professional? That is the key question here. And he goes through about how to break through it. So it's not just about the beatings that we might receive for that sort of stuff. It's actually also about how we can do something that drives forward. And the third one, and this is a really challenging book because it will call you out. It's called Existential Kink. Now, this is the title has got a little bit of like, it's a little bit weird and all extra stuff. And Carolyn Elliott's the author of this. She's got a PhD in psychology. It's really interesting because it's really clear that she has the psychology background to speak to this, but then she uses her life and some of her downfalls of what happened, as well as the fact that she was a dominatrix. She uses this to kind of really use the idea of kink to say, whatever story you're telling yourself that's blocking you from the success that you seek, she's saying you're doing it on purpose because you're getting some juice out of it. You're getting a dopamine hit. I mean, this book was a kick in my ass. You're getting a dopamine hit because of your little sad story about whatever it might have been, blah, 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 blah. And she brings this out in a way that is really, really powerful. And everyone has one. I have one. I could tell you more about it if you really want to hear it. Those of y'all that know me, like over the last couple of years, like COVID was a pain in the ass time for all of us. But I had the best story, the best whiny little story about blah, 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 blah. And the thing about it is this book actually says, hey, it's okay that you have that story. It's not about beating you up. But she quotes Carl Jung a bunch. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And she says it over and over and over in the book. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What does that mean? Okay, I have a story. Most everyone that's in the studio audience has actually heard me tell my story, my little whiny little story about like my life and stuff like that. And it's limited me. So part of the value of the book is Karen Elliott gives this set of tools for just making it more visible about what that is about, what that challenge is about. What is that limiting story about? And it's not making the story wrong or right. It's making it conscious so you can do something about it. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you would call it fate, from Carl Jung. This is a really powerful book. You have to have a little bit of tongue in cheek with it because she uses stuff from her experience of being a dominatrix and the whole idea of kink and stuff like that. There's nothing that I think you'll find offensive about it. It's a playful way of talking about a really serious subject. The thing that I actually like about her style is I've read easily 200 books on psychology alone, not to include philosophy and other things. 200 would not be, that's not hyperbole, that's real. The thing I like about what she's doing is she uses these esoteric concepts and then she playfully ties it to how we limit ourselves or how we might have fetishes, or like telling a story that's limiting you is one of the things that happens. And so great books, definitely of interest. Those three books, I don't have an affiliate link on Amazon to put them here. Just go get them. Go get them. Or if you don't get the books, at least read the synopsises of each one of the books. I kind of gave you a little bit of a taste for the three books. They're all really valuable books. The books that I suggest, I promise, are going to be always ones that make sense. That they're not, there are books that go on and on and on and on, and that are mainly fillers on top of a 16-page concept that has 400 pages around it. No, these are all valuable books, and the authors didn't belabor them. So with that, the black slide always reminds me that this is where we're going to bring the community in. I would love to hear from others. I know that there's a number of y'all that have had things that that you might want to share about. No one has to share about. I promise I can talk about some of my things for quite a while about this. But would anyone like to actually signal me in your with a digital hand or a physical hand if you're interested in actually saying something more? Otherwise, I can continue to regale everyone with my own scar tissue. Anyone? Anyone like Keikoa? I mean, you didn't raise your hand, but I just know you wanted to say something. It's always great to have you here.
Sure. Yeah. Give me a talking point, and I'll try and come up with something. What would you like me to share?
So you sold a platform to the New Zealand government for managing conversations, and it's quite a successful thing. But then you decided, for whatever reason, that you're going to take a little bit of time to just take some time off, right? And so what I'm wondering is, you took some time off, and you're now getting back into the game. Why'd you take the time off? Like you were on top of the world, at least from New Zealand's point of view.
I mean, it's the bottom of the world. It's that down.
Yeah, bottom of the world, top of the world.
Yeah.
Why take the time off? Why stop everything? And you don't have to go into a lot of the details, but there's maybe just the what was so critical that that you said that you took that time. I mean, I admire you for doing that, because it takes a lot to be that successful, and then to say, hey, wait, let's hold on for a little bit.
Right. Yeah. And just to bring it back to the topic of this conversation about inner game, and I liken it to self-work and self-development. It's a very similar story as yours, Kevin, in the sense that, I got to a point in my career where I was doing a lot of great things, and by all standards, I was a great success. And then there was a point where, there's work, and you do work because you believe it has some sort of meaning and some sort of purpose. And then as you delve deeper into what you're doing, you're finding that maybe this isn't actually fulfilling you anymore. And then you're searching for what is actually going to provide, that sense of wholeness and completeness, and also then to bring that as the motivation for why you should work. So that was 5 years ago, and I'm stepping back into the game now. And the journey since then has just been about, doing a lot of the inner game work to really align all aspects of my life. As you were showing in that slide, there's different, what would you call again, domains, right? And, what I found a lot in my life back then was a disconnection or dissonance between the different domains in my life that were important, but I wasn't able to bring together. And I found if one wasn't really thriving, it would manifest in other domains, or I could do a really good job of covering it up with my work, but then when I get home, I'm feeling like crap, So I think this is a very stereotypical story for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially, when they're first starting off. They pour all their energy, their life into it. And at some point you start to ask your question, why am I doing this? And then for me in particular, not really understanding the reasons why from a deeper level, there was no fuel for my fire to continue. So what I had to do instead is find that fuel, find that purpose for me to move forward and step back into the game.
Well, it's also, it's interesting. You haven't necessarily, I know about your startup, but give us like a really quick note about what does your startup do, like the community work and that you're working with.
Yeah, in really short words, I was developing a system to essentially redesign government in a way, in the way in which we engage and interact with our citizens to go about managing resources and developing services for the public. So everything from healthcare to education to even infrastructure and where we build roads. And it went across the entire board, and it touched on a lot of different things underneath the hood of the government engine that would allow for this level of interaction to happen between a common citizen and the powers that be.
So tell me a little bit of this. Then you've told me a story about this that I actually want to tease out in front of everyone else about what's the inner game got to do with the outer government kind of stuff. That'd be an interesting thing for you to share, just because I think it's absolutely beautiful about this, about how this wraps into your venture.
Yeah, exactly that. When I started the project, I was looking for a meaningful thing to invest my time in. I already had another business that was doing very successful. It was a services business. We also had some products that we were selling into government. And I found that was, it was more for profit at the time. And I was looking for something that would provide more meaning to myself. And I thought this would be a good idea, some sort of tech solution to better the world, to better my community and my country that I'm living in. But then it was a very superficial understanding of what that meant, and so I operated with this superficial purpose in a way without a full understanding of what it means to be providing a service of this level to actually help people. And when I didn't understand what it actually meant, I didn't have the I guess you could say the foundations within myself to be able to support a vision of this magnitude. So without that foundation, working in the context of government, I'm sure many have, we know that it takes a lot of time, a lot of talking, a lot of energy to move some simple things forward. And in the speed of which entrepreneurs work, we don't like going slow. And it takes a lot of, I don't know what the word is, staying power to continue working in that environment. And I found that for myself, I spent about 2-3 years doing it, and the speed at which government was moving, it was always coming to this question of like, is this actually going to work? Or are they actually going to want to do this? And through that entire experience, I came across many of my own challenges as an entrepreneur in wanting things to be success, in trying to, push a solution out there that I think would help, but wasn't being received. It brought up a lot of inner stuff in terms of what I thought, who I was in terms of an entrepreneur. And so, to put in a nutshell, it really questioned it really put me in a place where I had to question who I was, because before this project, I was super successful in a way. And then this project was just a long slog, and I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then to add a little more context to that, there was a lot of stuff that was happening in my personal life that was just like all coming to convergence of like, you need to take a break. So the inner game work, is that, especially when we're doing stuff that we were trying to, change the world in a way and lead or influence the systems in which we see that there can be improvements, especially if it's impacting a lot of people. I felt like there was a level of maybe authenticity that I didn't have just yet in order to really own the mission. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. That's exactly it, because one of the things that I think is implied, there are a lot of people that are really upset with governments around the world. And I do think there's going to be this massive change. I think we're going to see in the next decade, we're going to see a lot of change, a lot of gnashing of teeth. And there's going to be new models that are going to emerge. And I think that you're pointing on something that, as new models emerge, right? Part of the thing that's going to change is we have to change ourselves before we, people are so stuck in that's Marxist, that's, socialist, that's
yeah.
Right? That part of to learn a new language, we have to do the inner work. Let me do this. I'm actually going to ask, just with the time, Omar got his hand raised as well, and I know that he's gone through and done slogged through a bunch of different things. Thanks, Keiko. I didn't mean to. I'm actually learning how. I think Jello and I are actually doing the screen changing and all that sort of stuff. If you'd like to stay on, I'll get Jello to spotlight you back in. But Omar, you've got a point to share about this as well, because you're going through your own personal transformation. You've been doing the same thing. It's one of the reasons that you and I originally connected. It's just being like, it's like, how's it going? Well, it sucks, but hey, we're still going. Yeah, what would you like to share?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. There's a lot of really good points that were kind of brought up today, and just some recent stuff that I've seen and gone through as well as part of my process and reflections on it that I thought were really good. The earlier video clip that you had of the Jordanian, farming kind of solution and everything was pretty interesting, because there's just this recent show called Mo that came out about a Palestinian refugee that's been growing up in Houston and battling with the non-identity and non-citizenship and non-country kind of nationalistic kind of capacity, and then essentially becoming an entrepreneur, right, and kind of hustling as an entrepreneur in Houston. And it's just interesting to see kind of that story. One of the premises of it is like the olive oil and how special the olives and the olive oil is to the Palestinian culture, and how he starts to actually integrate with Texas culture around that, which is really just interesting, right? I think it was just kind of, and I think this is a story that's going to kind of continue, that shows his struggle, how he had to like flee Iraq during the Iraq War to come to America and act as this refugee, or he was this refugee, not act as it, but then again, see this entrepreneurial mindset in this kind of fashion and circumstance come out, right? And what his purposes were and what, his goals were. He wasn't trying to get an IPO. He's not trying to raise money from venture capitalists, right? And he's just trying to survive. And again, it shows like some of that different motivation and incentive base that still, drives the required capacity to be an entrepreneur, to get business done, to make trades happen, to get deals signed, to just keep going and going with it, because there's always going to be difficulty too, right? The other kind of interesting reflection was when you said Burning Man, and I just got back last weekend from the Fish concert in Denver, which was like a four day, like pretty much giant festival, almost like 100,000 people at this stadium in Colorado. And I've been going to these concerts and festivals since I was in high school, and it's just interesting to see the culture that's been following, this band, right? And kind of they go from place to place, and they create this almost tribe, right? And there's all these entrepreneurs even within that, right? And you can see them coming from places with the T-shirts, the hundreds and thousands of shirts that they're trying to sell, or hats, or these cool hot sauce bottles, or I don't know what, right? And again, they're entrepreneurs that are doing stuff with incentives that are different than what I've been thinking about, or what I've thought I've been needing to think about as an entrepreneur. And I think that is helping me reestablish a little bit of my kind of, North Star in being an entrepreneur, right? Like, why am I doing it? What's my purpose? What's going to keep me satisfied? Is it, raising money from an investor or doing a big exit? Or is it, doing something that I, have a passion for? And it's that constant question that I'm still, looking at and going through myself to some degree, because of the previous pains and things that I've seen and trying to do different sorts of businesses. And I mean, it's a struggle, it's a journey, but you got to find ways to get out there and kind of reflect and find what works for you and what works for other people. And it, I think it's a timing thing. I think for some people, it just when the right moment is there, it's there.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? That I always wonder, could I have done this earlier in my life, where I'm actually happier and happier on that whole path, right? There's so much gilded fakeness in entrepreneurship. Like when we see one of my friends, Bajoy Goswami, he actually calls it entrepreneur porn, right? The entrepreneur porn, right? You hear about the guy that just had the big exit. You see the 2 sports cars he just bought. You see the pictures often, like on the yacht, doing all sorts of crazy things like that. Like, I used to think that was it, and it's not. So it is interesting, and it's interesting to use some of the other analogs, like you're saying about the this idea of having, like even this band that's got this following, that's got, I don't know a lot about them, but it's interesting that they actually had.
I mean, they're, when you look at them as a business model themselves, it's genius what they've been doing for over 25 years. They've created this, gigantic commercial operation with all this, like, following and audience and consumer base. And what is it based on? It's based on music and love and just happiness and, people getting together and having a good time. And it's just, how big that could become out of something like that as a concept, not the necessarily, I got to do this and I got to set up a business model and I got to go go through these stages. It's just, it makes you think twice, about, again, what kind of business are you trying to do?
Exactly. Well, let's do this. We have a couple of new people. I want to bring our conversation to a close about the inner game. I think we're going to continue this part of the conversation. And I know that in the chat session, we have a number of people saying, hey, we're going to have to hop back into another meeting. Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Keikoa, for doing for sharing insight stories and stuff like that. Melvin just messaged me and said that Gregory is here, innovator joining for the first time from Texas. I don't know, Gregory, if you would like to do a shout out really quick, we'd love to hear from you. And then Franz, I see you're here from Haiti. If you would like to actually say something in a second too, I'd love to have you say something. Gregory, would you like to, what are you up to? What are you working on?
Howdy. Yeah, thanks for having me. I was just introduced to this by Mr. Melvin Hall there, and yeah, I'm transitioning in my life. I just figured out you look much younger, but I'm about your age, and so in my early life, I tried some entrepreneurial stuff, had some not really money making success, but I did have success, developing some products and moving forward. Life took me in other directions, and I had to kind of go the safe route for family and stuff. So I got a job, right, and career. But anyway, I'm at a point where I'm retiring from that career, and so I feel liberated, right? Just being in that atmosphere. Really, there's things I wanted to always do, but I kind of felt like my hands were tied. And so moving forward, I'm doing some of the things I want to do now. Got a lawn doctor franchise that I'm gonna be starting up in the McKinney Allen area. And I've, getting into it because I'm familiar with that industry to a degree. And, I've got some ideas also on improving that. Coming from the career I'm in, I also have another device that I'm going to start working on. It's relatively simple, but I think it can have high demand. But I guess tying this back into what y'all been discussing, you're talking about, I see a lot of finding purpose and whatnot. And so, yeah, there's been a lot of that introspection in my life, right? So I always wanted to go the entrepreneurial route because what it is it's freedom, right? As far as for me, what gives me purpose in my life has been my family. That's above anything and anything else. I'll die for my kids and do what I have to take care of them. And that's why I kind of went the more conservative route. But again, it's just right now, I really do have a feel of liberation and what I'm doing, and the failures, the successes, I've learned a lot. So I found, early on, like in my earlier entrepreneurial stuff, and why I didn't have success was, I was young, young and dumb. And I had a lot, you want to listen to other people who are experts, but there can come a point where you're trying to appease them to a degree, maybe following their lead because of, again, being young, lack of confidence and uncertainty as to what I'm doing. Now, later in life, I see absolutely listen to people, but you should know inside your direction. And
that's always one of the hardest things to do. One of the things that I've told some interesting stories is, like, my mother, for the longest time, for my first 10 years of being an entrepreneur, would tell me, why don't you just go get a job? I'm like, Mom, stop it. So yeah, it's about listening to people, but making sure you're listening to the people that are actually going to, and nothing against Mom. It's just, it's interesting. Well, let's say this. Welcome to the community. We'll wrap up. We're going to wrap up for today, but welcome to the community. And we'll definitely make sure that Jello invites you to the new community site and let's tell Melvin thank you for inviting you to the community. So thank you for that.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Hey, Franz, I don't know if every once in a while, it's been a while since you've been on, and I'm just wondering if you're actually able to tell us, last time we talked to you, you're training people in Captain Haiti about in cryptocurrency trading. I'm just wondering if you'd like to say anything. It'd be great to hear from you. Oh, let's see. Looks like your video stopped for a second. Go ahead and take it off of mute.
Yeah, I'm on mute now.
Yeah, now I can hear you. Go ahead, go right ahead. Tell us just like 30 seconds really quick about what's happening there.
Yeah, we still keep training young people about cryptocurrency adoption. I think it was a good experience. I still can see. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, well, I was going to say it's an inspiring project. Do this. Send us a quick this next week. Send us a short video so we can share it with the world. It would be great to actually have an update about that project, because it's a really inspiring. What Franz is doing is he's actually he's training young people in trading crypto tokens, cryptocurrency, and then with that making a living enough to survive and thrive in Captain Haiti, which is Captain is at the northern portion of Haiti. So thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so
Cool.
much.
Oh yeah, well, I tell you what, well, yeah, it's great to see you. Great to see you. All right, well, what we'll do is, just from the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Just getting back to this slide. My uncle always used to say, the tech ranch is named after a ranch my uncle Dick Burson actually had. And he would always say, take a deep seat. What it means is to take a deep seat is when you're on top of the horse, you actually have to really dig in to ride. And as you're taking your ventures and moving your ventures forward, make sure you take a deep seat. Yeah, the scar that I have right back here is one of the times that I got thrown off of a horse. But you know, it's just part about getting back on and understanding it's part of the process. Thank you to everyone for sharing the stories. There will be more sharing back online. Part of what we're going to do is we will post these posts we'll post the links to the YouTube and to the community site as well, because I know that some of you might not want to publish stuff via video, but you might want to share a little bit more. And there's a private area that will have discussions that follow each one of the VO Weekly topics. So thank you for that. And if you're not in the network yet and you want to make sure that you can get on the network, you can come into the typically, if you want to be part of the studio audience, we actually want to know who you are and all that sort of stuff. But we are streaming to Facebook. We're streaming to LinkedIn. We'll be streaming directly to YouTube shortly in the future. But if you want to get onto the newsletter, make sure that you go to the site. If you have a country that you'd like to see represented in the family of countries that are involved in this work, there's a place to say, hey, I want to be a volunteer country manager. Now, many times the country managers are actually the diplomats of some of these different locations, like they're consuls of locations, or they could just be someone that happens to, like the country manager of Armenia is a business school professor at University of Texas at Austin. And he saw what we were doing and said, hey, Kevin, will you actually bring this work to Armenia? And so part of what's happening is, and now 10 years after he asked that, I'm going to be in Yerevan in October. So sign up there. If you have something to add from a mentorship standpoint, if you have scar tissue to donate to other entrepreneurs, please do share that. So it's always an inspiration to be a part of a group of entrepreneurs that are driven by vision and values. Thank you all for doing the work that you do. Let's go change the world for the better together. With that, we'll say goodbye for today. Thank you all for being here today. Take care.